This is an introduction to literature. First things first, what is literature? And why do we study literature? What is literature? Literature, in a broad sense, is anything written, including writings that have a factual or informative nature. Literature, in a specific sense, are imaginative writings communicating life experiences, thoughts, and feelings about life, such as stories, poems, and plays. Why do we study literature? There's several reasons. Among those are to be informed, to be entertained, to be exposed to new ideas or have familiar concepts reinforced, to deepen our understanding of life's complexities, to understand our own nature as well as that of others, to develop sensibility and compassion for fellow human beings, and to achieve intellectual growth and the power to tackle our troubles in a more effective way. Why write about literature? Writing about literature forces us to organize our thoughts and state clearly what we think. It helps us to clarify what we know and believe. It gives us a chance to affect the thinking of our readers, and it helps us to learn. What is good reading? Good reading is not fast reading. We must slow down. Good reading is actually rereading. Good reading is active reading or critical reading. So, what is active or critical reading? With active and or critical reading, your goal is not only to read, but to construct meaning. You must consider the rhetorical situation. The term was first used by Lloyd Bitzer in The Rhetorical Situation to refer to all the features of audience, purpose, and exigence that serve to create a moment suitable for a rhetorical response. The concept itself, however, is a very ancient one and appears in some form in many earlier treatises, including Aristotle's Rhetoric and Cicero's De Orator. The rhetorical situation consists of the writer, the purpose, the audience, the topic, and the context. So let's go back to active reading. What are the purposes and goals of active reading? The purposes and goals are to capture main ideas, key concepts, and details of reading, to target, reduce, and distill the needed information from the text, and to cut down on study and review time when you return to the text. Active reading includes annotating, note taking, or journal keeping. Some tips on annotating or on textual annotation: underline, circle, or highlight passages that strike you as particularly important. Make notes in the margins as to why certain points strike you. Suggestions for annotating a text can include labeling and interpreting literary devices, labeling and explaining the writer's rhetorical devices and elements of style, or labeling the main ideas, supportive details, and or evidence. Active reading strategies. Choose a focus or critical lens. What is the purpose or goal of the reading? After the focus is determined, highlight only relevant information. You can also ask questions of the text, yourself, about the cultural context, and the author. Make connections to yourself, to other texts, and to the world at large. Use different strategies to achieve and maintain focus while reading. Determine ahead of time why you are reading this text and how it should be read. Adjust your strategies as needed. What do you mean by critical lens? Critical lenses is related to literary theory, which is the search for explanation, laws, and principles of different literary phenomena in the world. There's two broad categories of criticism. There's evaluative criticism and interpretive criticism. Evaluative criticism seeks to determine how accomplished a work is and what place it should hold in the evolving story of literary history. Interpretive criticism seeks to explain, analyze, clarify, or question the meaning and significance of literature. There are various critical lenses, including formalism and new criticism, feminist and gender criticism, Marxist criticism, cultural studies, historical criticism and new historicism, structuralism, and post-structuralism. Formalism and new criticism, the focuses on the formal elements of a literary text, for example, structure, tone, characters, setting, symbols, and linguistic features. It focuses on the text itself and not on extra textual features. In general, terms associated with technique are part of this critical lens. How does a poem, play, short story, or novel work? Once again, you analyze things such as style, figures of speech, poetic structure, imagery, characterization, point of view, plot, setting. Formal and new criticism. This is analysis of how a piece of literature works typically leads to a conclusion about what it means. Feminist and gender criticism focuses on the roles of women in literature or the culture, or on the relationships between men and women. Feminist and gender criticism questions: how does power and gender interact in a work of literature? Why are certain behaviors considered masculine or feminine? Marxist criticism was originally sought to use literature in criticism to forward a socialist political program. The Marxist ideology suggests that all human interactions are economically driven, and the basic model of human progress is based on a struggle for power between different social classes. With Marxist criticism, there is a concern for how a work of literature treats social class. What are the power relations between characters, and how does a work reinforce or undermine the prevailing class structure? Seen from this perspective or this critical lens, all literature is inherently political. Cultural studies is an interdisciplinary field of academic study that focuses on the social relations and power structures encoded in texts. One major trend in cultural studies is the attempt to broaden the canon. Historical criticism and new criticism. The practice of analyzing a literary work by investigating the social, cultural, and intellectual context that produced it. The historical lens allows critics to connect the literary work to the life of the author, the literary period, and the larger social and political context in which the work was produced. Structuralism is concerned with the structures that help us to understand and interpret literary texts. According to the structuralist critics, we can only understand a text by placing it within the broader context of culture and other texts. Post structuralism begins with the insights of structuralism but carries them one step further. Post structuralism posits that no text has a fixed or real meaning because no meaning exists outside of the network of other meanings to which it is connected. If you have any questions regarding this lecture, please post them in the Week 2 Lecture 1 discussion forum.